Hi everyone, I just thought I would do this very quick little extra recording for Learning Plan 2 because I realized I really didn't talk very much about the defense mechanisms, and it is important to understand those. In your book, there's plenty of defense mechanisms that are covered. However, the ones in this little PowerPoint slide are kind of the ones I want you to focus on. And actually, when I send out a PowerPoint review for the exam, I will usually tell you which ones out of these to focus a little bit more on, because some of these defense mechanisms are just much more common than others. And so there are some that I really want you to know. And I know in the reading you might get overwhelmed when you see that big huge list of defense mechanisms. So anyways, so they are defenses against anxiety. They are automatic coping styles, so we don't even think about them. We don't usually consciously use them. They protect us from anxiety, and they maintain our self-image by blocking feelings, conflicts, and memories, and they can be healthy or unhealthy. And I think I did talk a little bit about that aspect, but basically if you were to use like denial, initially it can protect you from the full impact of something very traumatic, but if denial goes on forever, then you are probably not living in reality, and that can be very detrimental to your mental health. So it's usually if a defense mechanism gets used exclusively to the point where it's really impacting your day-to-day life and, again, your perception of reality. So an example might be a woman who is widowed, and maybe a year later she still leaves her husband's shoes by the front door, like she expects him to come home and just come walking in the door. So that type of denial would be very detrimental. So I found these cute little cartoons. Displacement. This is kind of a good one to think about because as a health professional, you are definitely going to be the target of displacement. So in other words, a patient is going to be angry about something, upset, uncomfortable, in pain, and upset with their family, and they're going to take it out on you, not necessarily the mental health worker, but the health worker in any type of setting can experience displacement. So that's when the patient's feelings really belong somewhere else or to someone else, but you're kind of an easy target and they don't have an ongoing relationship with you. So if they yell at you, heck, they're not going to see you again. So it's something that they do. And again, they're not choosing purposely, but they have these built up feelings and they have to go somewhere. And you just, as that health professional, just are kind of an easy target for some of those really difficult feelings. So here the cartoon shows the man is being yelled at by his boss, so obviously he can't yell back at his boss because maybe then he'll lose his job. So he displaces his feelings onto his child, so he comes home and he spanks his child. So the other, I think, common example of displacement is somebody's mad at something and they go home and they kick their dog or something like that too, which of course is some displacements are like if you do hurt your child or hurt an animal, obviously that's pretty unhealthy. So but that is basically what displacement is all about. So people do this all the time, and really it's up to the nurse to try to, if you notice a patient is yelling at you, they're being extra demanding, they say something insulting, it's always a good thing to not take it personally and just ask them, just acknowledge how they're feeling. Boy, it sounds like you're pretty upset right now. Tell me what's going on. And then eventually, hopefully you can get them to open up about what's really bothering them, because it really isn't helpful to be using displacement. Repression is pretty much that we unconsciously sometimes have all these difficult things that are on our mind or things that have happened in our past. But as you can see, this guy sitting on top of this iceberg, he's sitting on the tip of the iceberg, which means that there's a lot of other stuff underneath that's kind of buried. So his distress is buried and he doesn't look very happy. So we sometimes repress things and we kind of unconsciously force them to the back of our memory because we don't want to deal with them. It's too painful to deal with. But clearly it still affects our day-to-day life. Reaction formation, this one's kind of maybe a little hard one to understand, but in the cartoon, there's a woman, it looks like she's got those little granny glasses that slide halfway down your nose. So we're assuming she's at least a middle-aged woman. And she's got a baby in her hands and she's saying, "Aren't you the little sweetums?" But in her mind, she's thinking, "Oh my gosh, this kid is so ugly. I don't like this baby." But so what reaction formation does is that it's very unacceptable to her. It's like downright awful for her to think about her as a middle-aged woman not liking this baby. Because what woman doesn't like a baby? Okay, that's a stereotype, but it's very socially unacceptable for a woman to show a negative reaction to a baby. So by saying, "Aren't you the little sweetums?" she's actually behaving the exact opposite of how she feels, because it's much more socially acceptable to be cooing over a baby and calling them sweet or "aren't you adorable." It's much more socially acceptable than how she's actually feeling. Regression. We all use regression, and I think for the most part, some examples that we might think about are when a 3 or 4-year-old has a new baby brother or sister, and then all of a sudden they want a bottle. They want to regress back to an earlier stage of development. Adults can regress too. Actually, any age can experience regression, not just little kids. So that's why this shows a man in a suit and tie, and he's playing blocks, which spell raise. So like he wants a raise, but so he's playing blocks at the end of the day, which obviously is more of a childlike behavior than it would be an adult behavior. So sometimes under stress, we do revert to earlier stages of development, and we may not act our age, basically. Undoing. So the cartoon shows a guy having a hot dog and a cola and a triple-decker ice cream cone, and he's enjoying it very much, but then he feels some guilt, and now he's undoing those treats. So now he's not enjoying the workout. It says wretched workout. Now, if he loved exercise, it probably wouldn't be undoing, but he's exercising because he feels guilty about eating all that food that's very fattening and very bad for him. So the guilt is kind of driving his behavior. So he thinks he's undoing the thing that was unacceptable. So there's lots of different ways that we can use undoing, but it's usually a behavior that is, we do something that's not acceptable to us, and so we try to do something to like make up for it. Conversion. So again, I did talk quite a bit about conversion in the other Learning Plan 2 recording. So basically, this is just showing the hardness of hearing conversion reaction. The husband saying, "I want a divorce," and she's saying, "Speak up, dear. I can't hear a word you're saying. You mumble a lot." But actually, if she's having a true conversion reaction, she literally cannot hear what he is saying. Compensation. So this girl's pretty short, and she's saying to this really tall basketball player, "I may be short, but I know basketball." So she's the manager of the team. She's got her clipboard. She knows all the rules. So she is compensating for being short and being unable to play the game herself by kind of exerting her authority and kind of yelling at the tall basketball player. She probably admires and would like to be like the tall basketball player, but she's not. So she's compensating for it by studying and knowing all the rules and being a manager. So again, we can compensate in many different ways. So sometimes maybe a child going through school, they're not athletic at all, but then they work really hard at their academics and they do really well in school, or they're very talented in art or music or something else, even though they'd like to be athletic, but they're just not. So they compensate by kind of maybe even going a little bit overboard into another area of their life. Denial. Okay, this is a very important one to understand because many patients are in denial. And again, denial helps us because initially it protects us, but again, if denial goes on forever, it's not going to be very effective. So for this guy, denial is not effective at all because he's telling the surgeon, "Not to get knife happy, I've decided to seek my 4th second opinion about having this tumor removed." So clearly he has a tumor, but he keeps seeking other opinions because he doesn't want to believe it's real. So denial is basically saying something is not real, it is not happening. And it is very common, especially if you are just told that somebody has just passed away. And usually we're in shock, and the first thing we want to say is, no, I don't believe it. It can't be true. So any type of reaction like that where we deny that something is happening is called denial. And denial and rationalization are two that are commonly mixed up. So the difference between the two, rationalization is making an excuse for something, whereas denial is saying it's not happening at all. So this example for rationalization, the robber is saying that bank has plenty of money. They're not going to miss this. So he's rationalizing why he is stealing money from the bank. So it's really important to get those two clear, because I think in test questions especially, these two seem to get mixed up quite a bit. So rationalization, you're making up an excuse for something. So maybe you fail an exam and you say, oh, it's because the teacher doesn't really like me anyways. That's rationalization. If you say, no, I passed, even if you didn't, that would be denial. Projection, this is another one that's not really common, and I think I see this more in people that have schizophrenia than any other diagnosis, but basically he's got murder in his heart. So he is actually feeling murderous towards other people, but he's projecting his feelings onto others and saying, they're out to get me, they're out to kill me. So that's what that is. You actually have the feelings yourself, but you're attributing them to somebody else, and you're actually becoming fearful of those other people. Identification. So the little girl clearly has been very nurtured and she's had good role models. So she is identifying with her role model, and she is providing nurturing to her teddy bear as she's playing with her teddy bear and saying, this will only hurt a little bit. You can say, ouch. So clearly somebody has nurtured her. She's identified with that person, and now she is displaying those same behaviors. So actually this one is pretty healthy. All right, good. I'm done. That was 12 minutes, so I hope that explains it a little bit better, some of the defense mechanisms. If you have any questions, please shoot me an email.